Do you have a bucket list? And if you do have a bucket list, do you follow through with it? And do you feel like your life circumstances, especially in the pandemic, are making it where you just can't go to that bucket list and you don't, maybe you're even losing some hope? We have with us Karen Cordaway, and she is a former syndicated finance writer. So she knows a little bit about the money situation. She has a lot of great information. But the biggest thing here is that we're going to talk about today is her book and her podcast, and it's the Everyday Bucket List. In your book, one thing that really struck me was the idea of a freeze frame moment. Tell us a little bit more about what a freeze frame moment is.
Well, it's really about being in the moment and kind of taking a picture in your mind. So not just, looking around or, really stopping yourself and saying, this is special. This is something I can appreciate. I've waited so long to do this, and I want to soak this all in. So outside of just taking photos with a camera, you really want to kind of cement that in your memory, right? Because that's our own photography, or our album in our mind is so precious.
Your background, how you got involved in all of this. I know you had some loss early on.
I got into mindfulness, or just appreciating life in general, because I did lose my parents at what I consider a young age. And I thought that they were young in their life. So I was kind of, um, I had an awareness at a younger age that a lot of people don't have because they didn't go through the experiences that I went through. And I feel
Mhm.
like, in a way, as much as it was hard to go through, it's a gift, because when you can appreciate things from a younger age, you're
Yeah.
not looking back when you're 60 or 70 and saying, why didn't I appreciate this? Or, I had that
Mhm.
chance to do this. And, I feel like I was given a gift to not have regrets and to try to live my life very fully. And,
Mhm.
I also dropped out of the workforce, which is a very tough thing, and it's very controversial. So many people have their different ideas, and
Right.
it didn't feel like a choice to me at the time. So I really got thrown into personal finance, whether I wanted to or not. It was this, it was the school of hard knocks.
Mhm.
And what's funny is, because I came from the teaching profession, and uh, teachers are known to like stretch budgets because we don't always get the money that we need for our classrooms, and we have to be creative. Um, they were looking for writers uh, that knew about dollar stretching and money saving tips. So as I was learning things, I was also writing about it. I got that neat opportunity to do that. And I did write for US News, Money. I was featured in O Magazine, and some of the other
Wow.
places you mentioned I was featured. I would get quoted, which was so awesome, because really, when people are giving tips that they've never used, you're just kind of a researcher. It's
Mhm.
very different when you have to just come up with something very creative, and whether it's meals or how you choose to entertain yourself, um, you know, you really have to get very creative. And I had to do that in a short span of time.
Now, do you feel that you're naturally creative, or was it something that evolved? Because I know a lot of people will say, well, I'm not creative. How can I do that? And a lot of people, especially now, feel really stuck.
It was definitely a little bit of both. You do have to tap into your strengths. So if you're good with cars and there's things you could do to your car, to make it last longer, or, uh, if you know how to fix basic things, that can help you. So that's someone who would be, more into mechanics and stuff like that. That's not necessarily creative, right? But it's being creative with how you spend your money, or how you choose to
Mm.
stretch it. So you really have to tap into what are you good at, and
Okay.
try to use your superpowers. Everybody's good at something. So
Mhm.
you can, some people choose to work more, and that's fine if that's an easy thing for you to do and it doesn't stress you out too much. You can find ways to find extra work. But I think there's so much on the internet today, and you have to tap into people who have done these things. So if you learn how to meal plan, I never knew how to cook. And there's something to be said for when you're teaching yourself. It's almost like you know it a little more. I know that sounds weird, but making mistakes, you learn quickly, and it's like you don't have a lot of wiggle room to make mistakes when you're on a budget. So I was following recipes to a T. I only followed people on the Food Network because I thought that all of those recipes tasted really good. Like, I know that they really test their recipes. And so I was just very careful. And I would lean on things like I learned from my grandparents, not to waste food. And I would be
Yes.
very creative with my kids, like, hey, I got this new treat. You want to try it? Like, here's a little piece, disguising it, not, being so vocal about, well, you can't throw food in the trash. That's money. I didn't want to scar them like that. But it's like,
Right, right.
let's see if you like this. And so I was just really good about not wasting anything. And like I said, having very simple meals saved us a lot of money. And
Oh, yeah.
you're learning a skill. There's something to be said for learning skills.
And could you explain a little bit more about how the bucket list idea uh, came about to help people with?
Well, absolutely. Getting down to basics in the way of, what do you care about? What are your values? Because we've had to have so many shifts. People have had to move or change jobs or work more, work less. It's like
Mhm.
you really start to focus in on what is important to me. So maybe you start there and pick like the three most important things, and what makes you happy. Because when things are taken away from you and you're really stripped of material items or things that were very lavish and you thought you couldn't live without, does that really
Yeah,
matter, during the
right.
pandemic? You know, we can get back to that, hopefully, if things change, but it's like tapping into what really makes you happy and doing more of that. And
Hmm.
sometimes that's very easy for people to understand, and then there's other people that might have to do a little soul searching to
Yeah.
to figure that out. And I try to guide people. uh, I know you mentioned I've written a book. I try to help people find things that are very meaningful and that it's something they truly want to do. And we are limited, but I'll give you an example. My husband and I went to a wedding in Detroit, and I said, we have to do something in this area that's very Detroit. That's just how I am when I go somewhere.
Yes.
I have to see a little bit of the area. So we found the Motown Museum, and I'm a big music fan. Yeah, I love all kinds of music. And it was this very modest little place, and it wasn't a lot to go in. I think it was maybe $25. I don't know if the price has
Hmm.
changed. And you just got to see the very humble beginnings of all
Wow.
these superstars that came out of a neighborhood, all within blocks of each other, and how they were
Wow.
really transformed into, these giants. And so
Hmm.
we did that, and it just brought us a lot of joy. And then it's like, then you can springboard. You don't always have to have all your ideas all at once. Say, you know what?
Okay.
And this is prior to the pandemic, but I'll explain how it plays into it. So we decided, let's try to see any of the ones who are still living in concert. So we kind of stemmed a bucket list off of that, and we were able to see many of these people. Now there's a variety of price points. It just depends on, do you just want to see the person and you don't care if you're sitting all the way in the back? There's big
Hmm.
screens today. Or is this something like, I'm going to spring for floor seats, something like that.
Hmm.
So it gets very exciting. There's like a momentum. So if you pick a theme, and it could be something very simple, or it could be very big, and you just kind of run with it, and it just fuels you. I just constantly feel happy and have things to look forward to, even during the pandemic, because we just started watching how the Motown movie, and we were in grad school at the time. We didn't even really have interest in that at that time. And it's like, maybe you get a bunch of movies you always wanted to see, pick your favorite
That's a great
actor.
idea. Did you come up with the 10 steps easily? Because I was fascinated by the whole thing. So was it easy? Like, was it organic for you that you felt like you were in a flow, or was it something that you mapped out? I'm just interested in how you created it because it's really fascinating.
You know, it's funny when you've never written a book before, you go in one direction and then you go, no, I think maybe this step comes before that step. And so it definitely wasn't easy to just crank all of that out. I wish I could say, you know, I'm like Liz Gilbert or one of those naturally talented people. But
Yeah, it was amazing.
I just felt like I would observe where I think other people fell down. Because
Oh, okay.
yeah, because and some of it was my own experience, but I think sometimes people don't know how to pinpoint that they're not able to figure out why something isn't working and they just give up.
Yeah.
And so I really tried to tap into that because I would help people with budgets. I would do a variety of things, or I would always hear people say, yeah, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do this. And then they wouldn't do it. So I would really try to be an observer without being too nosy. Like, why didn't they do it?
Yeah.
So much of it really, some of it is unleashing some of those like limited mindsets, or forcing yourself to commit, because we're always waiting for this perfect time. Even if you commit, half the time you can get your money back depending on what it is, or you know, you get insurance for something. So it's
Right.
like, we all have things that might come up, but if you already have that locked in your schedule and somebody says, hey, could you do this? Even if it's a work commitment, say, you know what? I really devoted this time to X, or I have another commitment. You don't even have to say what it is. If you think they're going to be like, well, this is for work and that's just fun, you know, you could shift, blah, blah, you know, depending on the kind of culture you're in.
Right.
But if somebody asks you to do something, you're already committed. And
Right.
it's having a commitment to yourself. Like I said, getting back to your values. And this is important to me. And I'm going to make sure that this is a priority. And especially women or moms, like you're always willing to bend or sacrifice for your kids. And it's like, we have one life, you know, and I just don't believe that a mom's job or a parent's job is only to push the next generation.
Your books show them that you don't need to have those limitations.
Well, I think it provides clarity, because a lot of times when we say we don't have the money, we don't even know how much something costs. So we just assume it costs a lot of money. And when you're thinking about finance, whether you're trying to talk yourself into it, or like you say, how do we shut down excuses? Think of clarity and think of a budget and a bucket list. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind, right?
Right.
You want to be clear. That's from Brene Brown, who
Okay. Yeah, I love her.
yeah, it's funny because though her book is about leadership, it's really about negotiations, and everything in life is negotiation, whether it's with your spouse, your kids, and sometimes it's with yourself. And that's the hardest part. Like you're saying, it's in your head, those little gremlins in your head. You have to tell yourself,
Yeah.
you know, be kind to yourself, but also be very clear. So if you look at a budget, or you say, okay, we have this much discretionary money, what can we do with it? Or come up with your vision and see how you can make that happen, you know, in the money that you do have.
What I am excited about is that as you're speaking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this is great for graduation gifts, for college or high school. This is good for a wedding gift for someone. This has so much. And it's one of those self-help books that's not insulting. And I always warn people, never give a self-help book unless the person really wants it. Because one time I got a book when I was like 20 on codependency, yet that fell like a lead balloon. They were right, but it was like not a good present choice. But this is one of those books where it's self-help, but it's not going to be insulting, you know, like it's a fun book. And when you're reading it, You're aware of, this is the funny thing. I was so aware of all my deficits when I was reading it, but it wasn't insulting. I was like, oh yeah, I do need to do this. Oh yeah, I do. That sounds fun. It was like a fun guide on how to live life better. Yeah, and your podcast is really cool because I was listening to, I think, one on Utah. It's like homegrown tour guides. Here are the cool things where I live that are not the typical things you would see in a tourism book or even on a top 10 list or something. Just let everyone to know, if you're on YouTube, you're going to see it across the screen and in the description, her website. If you are listening on a podcast, you have to go to the description box, but also listen right now for her website that she's going to say.
And I'm going to spell it. It's Karen with a K, Aren, and the last name is Cordaway. Think of it like a compound word. It's C as in cat, ORD as in dog, AWAY.com. So KarenCordaway.com, or you could check out my podcast, the Everyday Bucket List Podcast, on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and other platforms.
I want to thank you so much. You provide something that is important for individuals as well as couples, and it's really helping their financial health, but it's also helping their emotional health to such a huge degree. And it's a great role model also for the children, because children need to see people having hope and following goals and commitments and following through as well. So I want to thank you so much for your time here.